everybody to the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. So today we're looking at power, unashamedly looking at power. And this is to try and examine out of three main forms of power that exist in this world, which might be your dominant form, the one that you're most likely to easily, successfully access and use. And then of the other two, how they operate for you, whether they help or hinder you at the moment, and what Spirit's advice might be around that. So just as a very quick explanation by what I mean about the types of power. The three that we're going to be looking at, the first is what I would call positional power. So it's really the power that comes from status, position, all of those sort of things in the world. People can have power because they were born into certain families. They can have power because they've reached certain material positions of power and so forth. They can have power because of the money that they have, even if they're not necessarily doing sort of something specific in the world. So the power that is material, the power that is positional or hierarchical. You know, you may shift in your level of power over your life. You may start off in an organisation at the entry level and eventually be the CEO. That would be positional power. The second form of power that you could be your dominant one could be influential power. So this could be the people, say, in an organisation that aren't necessarily the CEO but have a disproportionate impact on how successful something is, how a work culture operates, what decisions a board or a CEO might make. Out in the world, it could be social influences on the internet, it could be political activists. So this is all about the power of influence. And the third one is spiritual power, which in the context of this, I'm talking very specifically about a number of elements. That could be spiritual knowledge. It could be spiritual skills and abilities. It could also be spiritual connections that you have. A lot of spiritual stuff comes from understanding, I guess, spiritual systems, the energies that support them, and how you use your own gifts and so forth to make something happen, whether it's to manifest something, whether it's to achieve spiritual development or enlightenment, whatever it might be. And my thesis in this reading is that we have all three of these. The issue is, as I say, which is dominant, and then of the others, how they are helping or hindering us, or any blind spots we might have around our dominant one as well too. So that's what we're exploring today. What is your dominant power, and how do the other elements operate for you? So just put down the numbers. As always, you can go to more than one reading. You might be a kind of an amalgam of both. It might be that your dominant power shows up in one and maybe how the others operate show up more in another. So that's obviously up to you. Use your own intuitive power to decide what reading or readings to go to. But also to help, what I did do with the tarot deck we're going to use, which is Lilith and the Machine, I shuffled and asked Spirit for the first three major arcana cards that would represent an aspect of that pole's power that will help me, along with some other cards, to set a scene for what I think might be the dominant, and then we'll stress test that with some other oracle cards and then tarot to get into the detail for you. So for pile number one, we have Judgment. For pile number two, we have the Wheel of Fortune. And for pile number three, we have the Tower. So I'm not going to put any thoughts into your head about which they may be. We'll see what else comes up with the cards that are underneath here. I don't know what they are, so that's our first part of exploration that we'll delve into in a bit more detail to try and work out the dominant. But when you know what reading or readings are drawing you, then the timestamps as always are in the description box below, and I'll see you there. Welcome, pile one, to your reading. So you've come to the reading with Judgment, and I would say the first instinct I have around Judgment when I looked at the three would be to think spiritual, because this is a karmic card, and Judgment is also about making wise decisions. And in the way that I was describing how I think spiritual power operates, it does seem to be around knowledge, it seems to be around clarity, connection, and so forth. But the interesting thing for you is you're a little bit of a triple threat, because you then have Zeus as the divine masculine energy, which is leadership, which feels positional, and you have Freya, which is about sort of personal influential power, being irresistible and so forth, and the divine feminine aspect there. So I do think that all three operate for you, but I think the thing that brings them together is a clarity of decision. And I think that comes to you spiritually. So I think it comes from knowledge, but I think it comes from various clear senses, I would think, that give you that clarity, that give you the vision. And then what I think plays out, so I think these are actually going to help you, or this helps the other aspects of power more than hinders, but we will see what else we get, is that this leads you naturally to positions of leadership or positional power, rather than you were born into them. Now, some of you may have been, and then you're using a really strong karmic connection. It's your karmic sort of the build-up of your spiritual power karmically that's brought you there. But I think for most, it might be the clarity helps bring you to that sort of position. So I think most of you would not have been born into sort of, families of power or positions of power. I think it's more that you will achieve it through the clarity of good decisions. And I think that you have a very powerful sort of impact on people. You draw people in, and again, through spiritual sort of understanding of the dynamics and so forth. So let's get a little bit more information with some other oracle cards. Given that I think this is probably the dominant one, but I'm going to actually draw a card from 3 different oracle decks. One is for positional power, one is for influential power, and one is for what I think is your dominant one, the spiritual, and we'll see what else we get there. And then we're going to see with some astrology cards what areas of life this may most show up. So firstly, from the deep, dark and dangerous, I'm drawing a card for positional power. The reason I'm using the deep, dark and dangerous is not that there's anything literally deep, dark and dangerous about material power, but that it is often those sort of energies, and like the terminology, power corrupts absolute, power corrupts absolutely, is kind of connected to this concept of how we appropriately deal with that power. So I felt that seeing the nature of that power for you and for anybody in all these readings, I'm going to use the deep, dark and dangerous, it would be a good way to actually get a sense of how that kind of power is operating for you, because I do think you're drawn to leadership roles, or it will be something that you are called upon to choose whether to do in your life. So around that energy, we have Charon. Reciprocity. Okay, this may be why I do think the spiritual is the dominant, but I think the secondary one is going to be around positional power. I think it will lead you to that, but you'll do it with others. You'll do it through the wisdom of being able to connect to others. And this is also this sort of like the influence power, but I think it is going to, for most of you, play out in a transition in your life. I would say that most of you, as I say, will not have come from power, will not have come from any of that sort of thing. But you are going to go on your own journey, and you're going to deal well with others to make it happen. So I do think that is going to be a power for you, but I think it's one you translate into. It's not the one necessarily that you were born with. Then if we have a look at influence, Iris, journey, path, travel. It's all about journey for you. So yes, this knowledge that you have, there's a karmic sort of thing with judgment for you. The spiritual sort of background is going to take you on a journey. That part of your passageway, I feel almost like, although this is sort of looks like a compass, I almost feel like that's the coin that is given to Charon for the journey. So I feel like this is and it is, this color, Iris, is very spiritually attuned, but I feel like your way of dealing with others and drawing people to you is part of what you're going to use as the reciprocal energy that gets you to translate into this position. So there's something there about taking people on a journey with you as being part of what you would influence. And then your spiritual power, which I do think for you is the dominant one. Sacred Heart. Yeah, this comes from a very deep drawing from your heart. This is why it's kind of playing out this way, I think, because those whose spiritual connections are very sacred, very high order, are going to draw people in with a very positive energy and will be naturally drawn to almost servant leadership. So this looks to me like spiritual knowledge, power and connections that you have are your dominant force that you've come in with, but you're going to almost be a rags to riches, but it's going to be towards servant leadership, and you're going to inspire people on the way to doing it. So let's just get like a last piece of the puzzle before we look at tarot. I'm going to just draw an astrology card for each of these just to see any other information about how these powers play out in the material world for you. So around this journey to, I think, servant leadership, we have Uranus. Okay, you're going to be a change agent. And that makes sense, really, with the sense of being able to draw people into change and judgment, being able to make decisions quickly. One of the things that's going to be part of your power in the material world is because you can make decisions quickly and you're not afraid of change. So that's a powerful thing. Around how your power of influence plays out, pile one. The 11th house. Okay, many of you may reach this position through things like social media or your social networks. This, as I say, you're not born to it by the looks of things, but you're going to elevate yourself through a really wonderful way of dealing with people. Really sort of lovely energy, good social networks, and potentially social media. But if you rise to social media, if you rise to positional power there, you're going to be very big with what you do and very change oriented with what you do. And then let's see how the spiritual power, which I actually still think is your dominant power, it's just that it's used as knowledge and information and connection that helps you do these things in the world. We get the 7th house, connection. Divine sort of love, I would say, divine connection with the Sacred Heart. But I think you come from a very loving place, and your spirituality is powerful by virtue of being in relationship to others. This is why the reciprocity, the servant leadership. You are bringing in this capacity to make decisions, move through things and so forth, and you're doing it with a beautiful social grace. It is about relationship, but it's also about moving to positions of power. I'm also getting for some of you that you may move into this more Zeus-like realm through a relationship, through your connection and irresistibility to somebody else. So although it's not your main cause, you're looking for beauty and sacredness in relationships, it may bring huge change to you by bringing you into kind of a power couple type of scenario. So that's very interesting in terms of where your power is. It does come from this sort of sense of clarity. And as I say, probably clairsense is very strong for you. But let's have a look at tarot. Let's get a little bit more information. So we're going to ask a little bit more about that dominant power energy, about how your spirituality is playing out in terms of a power. And one of the things I would say about it's interesting, one of the things why I think this is working is relationship connection. I firmly believe that a lot of what we think of as our personal power spiritually is actually our connection to powerful energies and our knowledge and our understanding of that. And it almost takes that kind of humbleness within that to really access it and to deal with others well. So I think that you have that. I don't think you're the sort of person who, being told you have spiritual power, will suddenly think that you can run the universe because you're so much superior to others. You're actually seeing it in connection. You understand the connection to energies, on other dimensions and how that can work positively. So let's get a little bit more about this dominant power energy, your spiritual knowledge and power and energy. Pile 1. 9 of Swords. The Chariot. Yeah, there's something destined about it. The Hermit. Yeah, this is confirming definitely spiritual. The Sun, and that's your life path. This is powerful. This is 3 major arcana. It doesn't surprise me. And the 7 of Coins. Yeah, and it's showing what's going to happen. So you actually, I don't think most of you are born at all into power or privilege or anything like that. You may have relative privilege, you might have been born into the middle class or something, but like most of this comes from other lives and spiritual connections. I think many of you have mediumistic abilities, and you might have been a bit afraid of this energy to start with, but I feel like there's a very strong guardian angel energy around you. So part of this is to come to terms with and not feel bad about the fact that you do have this knowledge and this ability. Like some people might be jealous of you. They might sort of think, well, who are you, this young upstart coming along and being able to do all this stuff? But you're actually meant to do it. So your spiritual energy is meant to kind of take you out of a sense of guilt or worry about that, to take on your role, because you can balance things really well. The Chariot is balancing the head and heart, and this is pretty much what we're seeing here, the clarity of the head coming through spiritually with the heart as the spiritual connection. And the Hermit, this Hermit and the Sun, you are meant to be a bit of a spiritual guide, a bit of a spiritual leader, but I feel like it comes out in business with the 7 of Coins here. I feel like it's a very deeply spiritual journey, and that's its underpinning, and that's its compass, as I say, and that's what you bring to the table with your friends and with others and with Charon to go on this journey. And it is your life path, but it's meant to have a material outcome. You're meant to be at the end of your life better off materially than you were at the beginning. That's what this is saying. And your spiritual underpinning is what's meant to bring that about. So let's have a look and see how the other two are relating, helping or hindering. So we're going to have a look, given that that's the spiritual, we're going to have a look at the material here, and we're going to look at the influence there. So we're just going to get 3 cards for each and see how these things either help or hinder. So a spiritual pathway that is very sacred and part of your destiny, but makes you feel a little bit guilty, I think, about being in the material world. How does the material world help or hinder you in this pathway, in really fully realizing your power, pile 1? The Moon, the 3 of Cups reversed, Temperance reversed. Okay, so one of your spiritual powers, and that goes into the influence, and it'll be interesting to see what we get for influence, is about this beauty with how you do relationships. But as I said, I think you're going to inspire some jealousy. This sort of like deep spiritual connection you have with the Moon, it sometimes confuses relationships around you. And you could find jealousy, pushback, all of that kind of thing. That you really do feel like the sort of the young person in the corridors of power, and there are the people there who are nicely established, and you're upsetting the apple cart, particularly with Uranus there as well. So you need to be aware that while relationship in many ways is a genius of yours, there are also those that work against. Just as Zeus had to deal with that kind of thing. So just be aware of that, because you have a beautiful social energy, and you may feel and meet everybody with that same open heart that you expect. But what could hinder you, particularly around making this transition, is not understanding how subterranean some of the environment you're going to be in. So it has a very political or corporate feel to it, but it's around relationship. So that clarity is important. Otherwise, you could actually get taken off your own course, and start to be kind of caught up in this sort of emotional warfare almost, as opposed to following your pathway. So the material world with its competition and its intrigues is something you need to be aware of. Now, in terms of the influence power, also I'm getting, people don't understand how you've got here. They really don't. It's hidden. That's what's also bringing this out. So to the degree that you can maybe make clear, maybe even mentor people or something, you may be able to deal with that. Now, in terms of the influence power, how it may help or hinder, Knight of Wands reversed, 2 of Cups, 9 of Cups reversed. I do think some of you may become part of a power couple. There's going to be a lot of jealousy if that's the case. Just be aware of that. It's there, it's good, and your relationship in general is good. Your relationship energy is good, but I do think there's sort of something with the 9 of Cups reversed here and the Knight of Wands. You do upset the apple cart on one level or another with this energy. Like, it comes from a really good place, but there is something, I don't know whether you heard that sort of beeping outside, but I think that was the universe saying yes. There's something where there's jealousy, there's something where some might want to try and take from your joy. So you need to be careful. The influence side of this, there's some really good people around you, and I do think there's a significant relationship, but this is over and over saying the same thing. Your spiritual ability is going to take you to a much higher position materially and probably in terms of relationship than you started in, but that's also going to bring intrigue and jealousy. So you just need to be aware of it, pile 1. Okay, so let's see what spirit team we can have to support you. So firstly, a couple of angelic or God type energies to help you, and I think we'll particularly put it with these two around this. So the first angelic energy to help you around the material intrigue, we have Merlin, alchemy, manifestation, magician. Yeah, you do have the ability to deal with this, and that's connecting you again to the spiritual stuff. It will feel like magic. What you do will feel like magic, and that's going to discombobulate some people. So, but Merlin is there to kind of keep you on track. And I think it's really good to have alchemy when we have temperance reversed to get things back in balance. And then over here where I think there might be a significant relationship that people may be jealous of, but still it's a good relationship, we get Saint Dimphar, mental health, well-being and support. Yeah, I think that there's a very key relationship. It's probably a love relationship. It's probably a power couple. But even for those who it isn't, there's going to be someone who I think maybe channels some of the Saint Dimphar energy here to bring you sort of well-being in a difficult environment, because I think you have a very pure heart, right, with the sacred heart up there. And as I say, lovely relationship skills, but you're in a complex environment as a result of you're meant to elevate in some way. So let's also get you some Greek gods to help out. Greek gods or goddesses. So again, over in this material world, the world of Zeus, Pegasus, nature. Okay, I think understand the nature and let Merlin sort of give you the wisdom to that. Channel Merlin or whatever. Understand the nature that you're dealing with, because it's not the same nature as you. That will set you free. That will let you fly above it, pile 1. And in terms of the influence energy, Themis, cosmic order. Okay, this is all about balance and about justice. I think this is saying that ultimately you will come out on top. And if there are things that are done that are not right by you, then you will be supported and you will be protected. Some of you may do this through the law or something like that. That might be the area that you work in, but it doesn't have to be. But where there has been unfair things happening, I think Themis is here to bring it back into cosmic order, which goes back to karmic energy. There could be some karma that you are processing through this. But I think by and large, as I say, the energy you're coming in with is very pure. So I feel more that this will process the karma of others around you. Okay, let's get you a little bit of astrology or numerology as well, pile 1. So around the positional power element. 6. Community, collaboration. You are going to have to mix with other people. I think most of the people you mix with will be fine. There's just going to be some. You need to be aware of that. Who is your true community? Who do you feel the true alchemy with? And I think you will do something in the community. This is the servant leadership sort of energy. For your influential power, Leo, yeah, there's something dramatic, irresistible, charismatic about you. Don't hide it. If people are jealous, that's their problem. You should be able to sort of follow that sort of fiery, desirable energy that you have. And then for your spiritual power, which as I say is your dominant power, Aries, yeah, be ambitious with it. Be ambitious with it. You want to be Zeus, you should be, because you're bringing a different energy. You're bringing a spiritual energy to a material form. And let that be your drive, particularly if you are getting pushback or envy. You're meant to be a leader. It's saying it over and over. Okay, so to finish off, what I wanted to do was I wanted to pull a card from the success oracles and from the love oracles, just as some sort of examples of sort of influential, powerful, successful people in the past that you can actually use as sort of either their advice or maybe as a little bit of a prototype. So it's less about the person, though if you know much about the person, then that might align for you, but it's more about what their advice is. So firstly, around the success oracles, Sergey Brin. Now, I don't know who Sergey Brin is, but it seems to be sort of someone who is about finding answers, because this says provide answers to all life's questions, create a new verb, let me Google that and get back to you. He's probably connected to AI or Google or something like that. As I say, I'm not aware of his background, but this would say the knowledge. I think you're channeling in knowledge. I mean, almost AI type knowledge as well too. And it's like you're going to get the answers. You're about the answers. It said it right at the beginning. You can come up with the answers, the decisions. This is what will make you a great leader, a great person for people to connect with and so forth. But it's like you have a clarity. This is what this is saying. You have a clarity that most people don't have. And you bring in something new, potentially. That's the kind of energy of change around you as well. And then the love oracles for the kind of a relationship energy around how you manifest your power, pile 1. Zelda Fitzgerald. She says, you'll only be bored if you're boring. Yeah, like you are there's something very irresistible about you, effervescent about you. Don't let other people dim your light. She says, life always needs a little drama and lots of dancing. Yeah, this is this sort of energy, like there is something charismatic about you. Use that. And she says, think only of today, why worry about tomorrow? Now, what I think about that is, it is saying that you have a destiny here. You have a destiny to move towards leadership, and it's going to happen because of your qualities. You don't have to be too concerned about that. Just let it happen. The only thing is to be aware is when it happens, it's going to seem so seamless that it looks more like luck. And that's why you might get some jealousy. So just be aware that that could occur so that you don't let that get you off course. But your power, your dominant power is spiritual in the sense of bringing through knowledge, understanding, clarity. But it is meant to play out in the material world, pile 1. And I think you are destined for power or to be part of a power couple or both. So I hope that that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 2, to your reading. So you came to the Wheel of Fortune, and we have here as divine masculine and feminine energies to also help me work out what I think your dominant power energy is. We have the Jade Emperor for organisation. We have Athena for strategy. I was line ball with Wheel of Fortune about whether this was material or and positional power or whether it was influential, and it could be a bit of both, but my main feeling here is influential. And the reason being that Wheel of Fortune to me feels like a sort of a sense about where fortunes are rising and falling and how to actually make the most of it and understand the systems that you're in. Athena with strategy. Strategy suggests to me that you can understand and how to influence things, that it's not just everything falls in your lap. And Jade Emperor suggests to me that you're very good at understanding organizations, political systems, whatever it is materially, you get it really, really well. But I don't think you're born to it. I don't think it just sort of got handed to you on a silver platter, but I think that you're likely to rise pretty high in whatever you want to do. And that depends on what you want to do, because you may be sort of someone who's more into predicting the future, the kind of like the sort of like the zeitgeist, all of that kind of thing, and strategically moving sort of material things through change rather than necessarily being like the CEO or a political person. But it is possible that you could do those as well too. But I feel like for you, it's understanding the system, it's understanding the timing. You have a genius for it, and influencing what happens. Now, this doesn't mean you're not spiritual, and it doesn't mean that you're not, as I say, going to rise high. In fact, this does suggest you could if you wanted to. But I think for you, that the thrill and the power comes from understanding the system and being able to work it. So let's get a little bit more information around that. I have 3 oracle decks, which I think will represent the 3 different types of power. So the first oracle deck I'm using is the Deep, Dark and Dangerous for the material world. Not that the material world is necessarily deep, dark and dangerous, but as I said in one of the other readings, I think of all the realms of power, it's the one where that saying, you know, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely is the biggest risk that we have. So I want to see what energy you bring in from that very material power for power's sake, power positionally sort of energy. And we have the Hydra, regeneration. Okay, so that also fits with, to me, it is how your material thing could manifest and how you could bring the power in, but it's not being born to it, and it's not just assuming a position of power. This is about strategically changing power, understanding again the wheel of change, but also understanding with the organization that the more things change, the more they stay the same as well. So because the Hydra, when you take off its head, it grows another one. So I think you have a very good understanding of the system you're dealing with and how to influence in that system and where to do this, strike off the things that no longer work to bring in what is new. So there is definitely something here of the organizational or political strategist about you. Absolutely. But it's the strategy, it's the influence, it's how you do it that sort of like really kind of lights your fire. So let's get a card from the Colour Goddess casting cards for the energy you bring to influence, because I do think it's your dominant power. Crimson, atonement, karma, penitence. Okay, I think that you see what is wrong and what needs to be fixed up. And I think you have a very powerful force to get things back on course. So you're a highly influential person, but you're not influential in the sense of, you get out on YouTube and say really nice, warm, fuzzy things that everybody loves. You actually really get to the core of something. If you were on YouTube or something like that, and certainly with influence being your strongest power, any of those sort of platforms could be a place for you. You're going to be the let's get real and let's get better type of message. But it's very, very powerful. It's very passionate. It goes very deep. But I feel that your influence is all about clarity and getting things through and being strategic and and the outcome, almost like take no prisoners type of approach to get the outcome. So you're a formidable energy, I have to say, but you're more like Machiavelli than sort of somebody, as I say, who's just doing warm and fuzzies all over the place. You're kind of very, very for the outcome oriented. So that would be very interesting then to see what your spiritual energy and your spiritual power is. Mysticism. Okay, yeah, you are very spiritually adept. And I would be surprised actually in this collective if people weren't. But again, it's like the system. It's understanding the system. This shows the Kabbalah, but it doesn't have to be the Kabbalah. But you have a very strong connection to Source and a very strong mystical sense of what needs to happen, what needs to regenerate, and what needs to be healed. So there's a very strong spiritual underpinning. I would hazard to say that your strongest thing is your influential power, but your second one is the knowledge that you are bringing on a spiritual level that then is going to create this strategy that plays out in the material world. So it's very well developed, but I do feel that it's more a knowledge base that you draw from for the strategy than your driving force. You are here to influence and to change. This is a very, very fundamental thing for you. So let's have a look at astrology to see some of the areas in life each of these powers play out. So for the material world, where I think you are about regeneration, change, we have Venus. Now that's interesting because you come across as being this very, not severe, but very let's not take any prisoners energy. But there is a great deal of love. This is probably connecting to the mysticism. A great deal of love around this. You want things to be more beautiful. You want things to be more balanced. And in the end, you can sweeten the thing enough. And that's probably your genius. You can make the most difficult strategic and change energy and messages feel sweet to people so that they want to regenerate. So that you have maybe a very beautiful speaking voice or a lovely turn of phrase or something like that. Okay, so then for the influence power itself, the sixth house, it's in service to others. It's in the workplace more than anything. So it is playing out materially, but it depends on what your workplace is. It doesn't have to be an organisation. Though for many of you it may well be. But I feel it's about strategic stuff. You'd be an organisational strategist, not a service delivery person. You could potentially look at service delivery and how to serve others and so forth, but it would be from a strategic perspective. And then with your spiritual ability, which is highly mystical, we've got Uranus, so change. This is where the change energy comes from. So as I say, your dominant power is influence, but it is very well informed from a deep spiritual knowledge and an understanding of when change is necessary. So your impetus for your power is in fact a spiritual one, but it plays out in this incredibly strategic mind that then makes change palatable for other people. So you're a force to be reckoned with, I have to say, Pole 2. Let's get a little bit more information on it then. Let's actually go with tarot. So we're going to have a little bit more information about your dominant energy, which is influence. But we're also going to then look at how the other two ones either help or hinder. But firstly, just a little bit more information, Spirit, on Pole 2's power of influence. Three of Coins reversed. Queen of Cups. There's the Venus connection. The Tower reversed, and there's the change, but the ordered strategic change. Justice reversed. Five of Coins. Okay. I think because you're coming from a very strong change energy that is divinely oriented, you are about dealing with injustice. You would be the sort of people who could come in and change a political system or a very material thing to make it better and to go through that atonement energy. You have a very strong sense of social justice and you have a very strong sense of the material impacts of that. So any of you that wanted to sort of work in sort of like social welfare through strategy or through politics or through messages, or as I say, through influencing, through your writing or your speaking or something, this is actually a really strong way to use your energy. And you may sometimes have felt, and even while you do it, you may sometimes feel that you're kind of alone and misunderstood, but you're going to be able to do it. And the more that you focus on that and focus on a cause, the better. You can incrementally make change occur. This is the sweeter energy here. Your influence is to subtly, softly, but strategically get change to occur. Very emotionally attuned. It's interesting because I do think that some people are going to find you very sweet, very attractive, but I think that people who really see the strategy, they're going to find you a little bit intimidating, but they're also going to think, you know what, there's a really good heart here. And so I'm going to go with that change. I feel like there's a lot, like they're going to sense that you coming into their lives or their organisation or whatever it is going to change everything. And that might be a little bit scary, but they're also going to think there's something deeply authentic about this. And they're going to accept, because you say it, because your influence is so strong, that the foundation will no longer hold. It has to regenerate. It has to change. So you really are the natural change agent in one form or another. And very, very mystically and heart-based to what you do, but you just take no prisoners. So let's have a look at how the material power and the spiritual power either help or hinder what you're trying to do in terms of influence. So firstly, around the material world. Fool reversed, Four of Swords, Nine of Swords. Okay. You know what you're doing. You've done this in one form or another more than one time. So you either, by the time you've come to this reading, you've done organisational change, or there's something in your family, friendships, what happened in the schoolyard. Like, this is not new to you. You know where the centre cannot hold. You know where you can actually break through in some way, and you're not naive at all. But the interesting thing about this is this strategist. This is why I was saying Machiavelli. And I was saying maybe that sort of person rather than the CEO. There's something about your power of influence operates better a little bit hidden, because there's a lot of mental anxiety that can connect with this. And in fact, it could be that for some of you ended up like a CEO. There is a statement like, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. So that is possible. But I think for most of you, this is, as I say, it's more like Machiavelli in a positive way than it is being, the President of the United States. I think that the power that you have is subtle. It's very intellectual. It's about, what to do in difficult situations, but you won't necessarily be seen for what you could do here. Your influence is subtle and it's behind the scenes, but it's very, very powerful. Let's see how it plays out around spiritual energy, how that either helps or hinders your power, your influence power. Pile 2. Strength reversed, the Hermit, Knight of Wands reversed. Okay. See, there's a part of you that would much rather be a mystic sitting on a mountaintop, to be honest. But you're just not born for that. You're born to be, this power that's come through is influential. But there is a yearning for you to not be in the midst of all of this all the time. And it is saying your spiritual connection can help replenish your strength when it goes down. But it's saying that you have to take a far more conservative approach to the world than the inner hermit would like to do. So I think you yearn to tilt towards your spiritual power. But the reality is you're on a cause, you're here for a reason, and you have certain skills and powers that are not common and are necessary. But I think it does make you feel sometimes like, and I think sometimes there's something about the environments you're in where you might almost feel like, is this actually tarnishing my spiritual approach? Is there something, do I have to almost cleanse myself of it? But this is saying you can do that. That's fine. Your spirituality is very, very on point. But there is something about the battle, always the battle. So your spirituality can help, but I think there's a side of you that yearns just to be the spiritual rather than the material. But I'm sorry to say, Pile 2, I think that you have a destiny involved in this, and your power is going to call to you. So let's get you some spiritual team support. Let's get some spiritual team support around the material world and around the spiritual world to help you. So firstly, around the material world in terms of angelic or god or goddess type energy. About the material world. Thoth, wisdom, writing, Akashic records. Yeah, like the wheel of time, knowledge, wisdom. This is the thing. And the way that you talk, the way that you write, the way that you communicate, the wisdom that you bring to things. All of this, and it is in your kind of spiritual profile. So it's drawing from your spirituality, and it's great wisdom. So the wisdom to be able to deal with this environment comes to you through thought and innately in you, I think. And then around the spiritual side of things directly, St. Bridget, fire, passion, growth, yeah, you would really love to sit on a mountaintop and be a mystic. And there is, you have the heart of a mystic, but you have the destiny of an influencer. That's really what this is saying. But when you need to reignite your passion spiritually, you can do it. It is saying that you can do it. Let's also get you some Greek mythology support as well. Firstly, around the material world. Oh, that's funny. That came up for another Pegasus, nature. This is not your natural thing. This is not your natural environment in the sense that you don't really care about politics and all of that kind of thing, like for itself. You're not interested in power for itself. You are interested in strategically bringing about the change that's necessary for kind of spiritual principles to come into being. But if you understand the nature of the environment you're in, which I think you do well with the full reverse, you can rise above it, pile 2. And then around your spiritual energy and spiritual power, Iris, messages. Okay, yeah, so you're connected to the divine, you're connected to all that. Like, tune into that, particularly when you're looking for guidance or where you're feeling overwhelmed by the kind of almost material, leaden sort of feeling in the material world, so that you can rise up. There will be messages that come to you. You will get sort of like psychic messages and so forth that are going to help you. Okay. And I think you've got a kind of prophetic sense, a sense of what's coming, so pay attention to those messages. We'll also get you for each of the powers an astrology or numerology energy. So around the material power, waxing gibbous moon. So the waxing gibbous moon is all about clarifying your goals and getting a real sense of what you want to do. So this is, look at this as just goal-centered. Look at, your spirituality is your underpinning, your influence is your highest power. This is just about what are your goals. Clarify your goals. Every time you feel stuck, clarify your goals, because then you will have the influence to bring that about. When we're talking about influence, which is your strongest power, pile 2, we have waning crescent moon. So the waning crescent moon is about letting go and getting back to first principles. So again, I think it's always simplify, simplify, simplify. Whenever you're feeling these blocks or you're feeling a little bit depleted, simplify, let go of what doesn't work anymore. That's a strategic thing. People with strategy don't waste their time on things that aren't going to work. They move on to the next thing. And then in terms of the power of your spirit, 22. Yeah, you are very well advanced there. That's the point. It's like it is a power that you have. It's just, I think it's just dominant, not dominant in this life, because your skill in terms of influence is what is necessary in this life. But you are drawing from a great deal of spiritual knowledge and ability. So it's not as though that isn't there. Okay, so to finish off, we're just going to draw from the success oracles and the love oracles for some advice from people in history around success and around sort of the relationship energy and so forth that fits the sort of spiritual and the influential area. So it doesn't matter so much who the people are, because I may not always know who they are. It's more what the advice is and what that tells you for using your dominant energy and balancing out the other two. So firstly, around more the material success side of things, you've got Janet Yellen. Okay, so it's very financially powerful. So she is a financial guru in the US. So there is a lot of power around, the organisation strategy and that kind of thing. She goes, if it's going to crash, it needs government cash. When it rains, make it rain. You can teach a man to fish, but you'll also need to stimulate a fishing industry. Yeah, it's that strategy. That's the thing. It's like the influence. It's understanding the environment. It's regenerating. It's cutting the hydra head off. It's doing all of that sort of thing. So there's something about that energy of the material world and how to deal with the ups and downs, the wheel of fortune, that is part of your power. And then in terms of sort of the relationship influence and spiritual energy, we get Marilyn Monroe. Wow. No wonder you're influential. Very, very charismatic. She goes, orgasms don't exist. It's better to spend your time reading Ulysses. I think that's just humorous. Sometimes these are just humorous. She says, enjoy your wedding day. You'll only get to do that 3 or 4 times in your life. And she says, never pick stability over a good time. So I actually think I think that's Spirit trying to bring some humour in. I think you're quite earnest. You've got quite an earnest mission here. A little bit of lightness of touch, a little bit of humour will help. And you are attractive enough to do all of this. Don't ever doubt that. But I think, yeah, a sense of humour, because there's some pretty serious stuff you're dealing with, pole 2. So I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pole 3, to your reading. So you came to the reading with the Tower and 2 other elements here with the Divine Masculine and Divine Feminine to try and get me an idea about which of those 3 types of power is your most dominant. We have Prometheus, altruism, and we have the Muses, inspiration. And the interesting thing is that if I'd had to do a guess about what the Tower could be, I would probably have thought material positional power and change within that, like dynasties falling and new dynasties rising and so forth. But I actually think that this is about spirituality. I think that your dominant power is spiritual. And it may play out in things like power of the world, but if it does, you bring an incredibly altruistic view to that. So it's power that is very beautifully modulated. And you feel more like kind of somebody who would become a philanthropist than a CEO. Now, many CEOs become philanthropists, but there is definitely something in that kind of energy around you. And you do have a very strong influence energy with the inspiration. But I feel like with the Muses, it's a very spiritual form of inspiration. And I feel like the Tower here is really fundamental change. I think your spiritual power is here to shift something very fundamental, to bring more altruism and more heart and gifts to others. Because Prometheus brought fire to mankind and he suffered for it. So the gods weren't happy. So the powers that be in the pantheon were not happy. But he brought that. He was altruistic. So I feel as though that you're almost here on a hopefully not self-sacrificial sort of energy around spirituality, but there's something very deep that you're here to do. It's bringing a lot of power around change and evolution and revolution. And I think the second level power is around inspiration. But I feel like whatever the material outcome is, it feels as though it's more the outcome of a spiritual journey that inspires others than it is in being born to power or going up the ladder necessarily, though you may do that. So I think your power is profoundly spiritual and profoundly transformative. But just to get a little bit more information about how each of those powers that operate, I've got a different oracle for each power. So I'm starting firstly with the material, and I'm using the deep, dark and dangerous, not because the material is necessarily dark and dangerous, but because it is the realm in which if we have power and it corrupted us, it is, as the saying goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I just wanted to see that sort of energy in terms of your power. So we get Hecate, illumination. Okay. Now, very powerful. If you were to go into the material world and use this sort of energy, it would be very powerful. But it's illumination, again, fire. I think that you're here spiritually to bring new skills, new gifts, new understandings to people. And if it did go into the material world, it's highly transformative and highly illuminating and very, very powerful. But it's the power is the byproduct of the spiritual power that you're bringing in. Let's look at the influence, because you do have the Muses here. So you could be a muse to others, or you could be very influenced by others and use that influence to help the change. So using the Colour Goddess casting cards, an energy around your influential power. Teal, creativity, pregnancy, sacred feminine. So there's something the Muses, the female energy. I feel like you bring a profoundly female energy actually maybe into patriarchal sort of situations in some way, whether it's sort of materially or otherwise. There's a lot of creativity. There's the artist within you that helps with whatever this is. So, and the sacred feminine, very, very strong. Let's have a look at spiritual, because I do feel that's your dominant power. Astrology. So it's written in the stars for you. I'm sure that there would be things in your astrology chart would point to a lot of spiritual focus, things in the 8th house, things in the 12th house, really strong aspects with Pluto or the moon or Neptune. So there's something about that. It could also be saying that you bring that knowledge in, and that's how you do this. It's how you bring the illumination into the material world. It's how you bring something creative and new into the world as well. It could be very specific like that. But certainly there's something about the stars and the connection to the upper realms with you. So let's see how that plays out with astrology for what areas of life each of these play out. So again, the area of life where this capacity to illuminate and be altruistic materially. Venus, love, the divine feminine. It's interesting. I think that came up for another reading as well too. Some of you might have come to more than one. There's something about the feminine creative energy that helps illuminate, as I say, maybe more traditionally patriarchal environments. Then in terms of your influence and this creative energy, the sixth house. That's funny. It's very similar to another reading, actually. It's in service to others, but it makes a lot of sense with the Prometheus, the altruism. You are here to bring a very profound spiritual understanding and change, but you will do it in service to others, and you may do it as a career. You could even be an astrologer potentially. And then around the spiritual energy, which is your dominant power, I think, pile 3. Chiron, healing. There's something healing about what you'll do. Change, the change that's necessary, out with the old, in with the new, the healing energy, the altruism. In fact, I'm almost getting that some of you may heal almost Prometheus. Like it's healing maybe sort of injustice that has occurred with those that have tried to be altruistic or of the heart. I think there's something like that you may do. Bring the sacred feminine back into sort of workplaces or whatever it might be, or into, how we serve others and, kind of the body politic as well. Okay, so let's use tarot to get a little bit more information. So we're firstly going to just ask a little bit more about how your dominant power, which is spiritual, plays out. Then we're going to have a look at how the other two either help or hinder that power. So your spiritual power, pile 3. 10 of Swords. Page of Coins reversed. Ace of Cups. The World reversed. 10 of Wands. Yeah, you really are the person to help the weary and the downtrodden. You really are. You really are. You have a deep sense of what has been unjust in the world and what is incomplete and what is out of balance. And it's like, it's very much like, the sort of statement with the Statue of Liberty about give me your huddled masses. You live that. That's who you are. Like spiritually, you are of the heart, of the sacred feminine. Like your power comes from a really beautiful heart, and knowing where the systems and the world have let people down and brought drama. You are here to bring back the heart in some way. It's actually quite beautiful. I feel a bit moved when I'm looking at this. This is like, wow. And I feel like it doesn't take, you don't have to be a CEO to do it. It's like, I feel it's actually probably creative. I feel like the spiritual energy, then the second power is the influence, and something creative, a creative message. But it has a ripple effect into the powers of the world. So instead of, say, being a political activist, you could be a songwriter who writes music and lyrics that really shift, the culture dial. And many people in the political world will say, in fact, that, politics is downstream from culture, I think is the saying that I've heard, that sort of sense that the culture is actually the important thing. But this is coming from a spiritual thing for you. So let's have a look at how the material world and then also the influence power, so those two types of power either help or hinder what you're trying to do spiritually. So in terms of the material power, your material power in the material world, Page of Swords reversed, the Emperor, the Magician. Okay, all right. I think you've probably done this in other lives. I think, like, when I said like the Emperor and the Magician together, I feel like some of the sort of like the grand spiritual occultists who advised, the kings in medieval courts and so forth. So I think there's something of that energy that you're bringing in and the power to bring things together that will have an impact. I don't think you have to be the boss. I don't think you even want to be the boss. But the one thing that you have to be aware of is where power is the dominant energy for someone. because you're coming from a very spiritual power, very spiritual base, but there's some people very material, and there is a possibility here that your beautiful open heart and your altruism may not always fully understand the communication that's coming from the material world. So it's just to be aware of the environment that you're in if you do go into kind of the more material power areas. And then for your influence power, whether that helps or hinders what you're trying to do spiritually. Temperance reversed. The Chariot. Six of Coins. Okay, it's a bit of both, actually. There is a possibility that the influence power, which is your creativity, could sometimes get you out of balance with what you're really trying to achieve. You have to kind of balance almost the sort of like the methods and the means and the industry you're in and all that kind of thing, and the message, the spiritual message that you want. On the other hand, your capacity to influence, your inspirational energy, you're inspiring to others, what you can create is going to bring you benefactors and support financially. So you will be able to do something with that, but it's sort of like, what do you have to potentially sometimes bargain away? What's the balance you have to get between what your original vision spiritually was and what you originally wanted as a creation, and what you need to do to actually bring it into the world? Okay, interesting. So given that, let's get you some spiritual supports. So we're going to do this firstly for well, it's basically for the two areas that maybe help or hinder. So we're going to do it firstly for the material, then we'll do it for the influence. So we'll start firstly with spiritual team support to help you from angels or God and goddess energies. So to be able to navigate a politically much more potentially toxic and duplicitous environment, even you have all the skills, but to be able to really recognize when you need to do that, we have Archangel Sandalphon, music, Earth Star, answered prayers, prayer will help. But there's music, the music of the stars, the music of the spheres. I do think some of you do this through music or through a very beautiful voice or something like that. And maybe even in music, like listen to lyrics of songs, listen to what you hear sort of coming on the radio. There's maybe some sort of, to break through the static to get to the clarity. Archangel Sandalphon is helping you. And then for this bit where I think that, you are going to be able to influence in the way that you want to and create in the way that you want to, but there might be a little bit of a bargain around how to do that with what your original spiritual vision was. We've got Guru Ram Das, humility, spiritual practice, elevation. Okay, so get back to what the beauty of the thing was always. What was the music? What is the music of your soul? The humility of it, the spiritual practice. That's going to draw in support as well too. You don't need to second guess that. You don't need to limit your vision spiritually, I think. Okay, let's also get you on the same token some Greek mythology support. So around the material world and material power again. We have Typhus, fear. Okay, this is to help you understand there is some fear around this. Because your heart is so open, if you go into materials, I think part of this is saying that most of you may not need to do that. As I say, your creativity, your voice, and your influence is a secondary level to your spiritual one. You don't necessarily have to go into the material world, but if you do, Typhus is here to help you with the fear that this evokes so that you can get things back into harmony and answering your prayers. When we look at the Greek mythology energy to help your influence power and to keep you sort of balanced, to bring in the right sort of support, the right sort of benefactors, the right people for your message, we have Asclepius, healing. So yeah, there's something, Chiron, there's something healing about what you do. If you focus on that, your healing spirituality, and that keeps you in this sort of space, keeps you on your destined path, then you're less likely to get out of balance and you're more likely to bring the sort of material support that you need. Okay, so let's also get you some astrology or numerology for each of the types of power. So firstly, astrology or numerology energy around material power, where I do think you have to be careful with Prometheus. It's like there's a risk in taking this sort of spiritual heart into the material world. And I think that you've got support around you, but I think Typhus, is also saying when when you are kind of afraid of something, maybe it's a good signal to not go in that direction. But let's sort of see the energy again, like we have around the material world for you. Waning crescent. So the waning crescent moon is about new intentions and seeds. So work out what is your intention. If you are going to do something material, make sure you're clear on why you're doing it. What is the value add? What's going to come out of it spiritually for you, and then how would you express it? Because it's a tricky environment. The material world is tricky for someone with such a beautiful heart. Okay, so let's then have a look at your influence ability, influence power. First house, yeah, you are meant to be seen. Your creativity, your energy is meant to be seen. That your influence is part of your persona. It's probably, while I think spiritual energy is your actual superpower, the first house suggests that people see you primarily as sort of creative and influential. That's their main experience of you, I think. And then the spiritual power, which I think is your number one actual power. Midheaven, yeah, it's going to take you where you're meant to go, and you are going to be seen for it as well. So the message, so if you were creative, as I say, there's something very beautiful in the message that you bring. There's something very spiritual, and some of you may decide to actually, tilt at the tower here and the material world through a spiritual business, and if so, you would be likely to be very successful with it. Okay, so to finish off, we're just going to draw a card from the Success Oracles and then from the Love Oracles to sort of cover the Success Oracles to cover the material power, the Love Oracles to kind of combine both the influence and the spiritual. These can just be funny, so if they're just funny, just take it as funny. But like it's less about who the people are, though that if that resonates for you, by all means take that. We're just looking at what the advice is for you. So around the Success Oracles. RuPaul. Okay, then creativity again. And potentially that sort of sense of almost gender fluidity for some of you. The advice is tailor conventions to suit you. Yeah, make it suit you. That's the important thing. Speak volumes. So yeah, like that, your particular message is incredibly important, and a showstopper never stops showing up. So yeah, make sure it's an environment that you want to be in and you want to build in so that you don't feel out of sorts. Okay, and for the influence and for the spiritual side of things. Wow, okay, Joan of Arc, there you go. See, there's the pure heart. And think about it, Joan of Arc went into the court, and at first she was a great warrior, and then she was betrayed. So there really is a thing here, I think. Spirit does want you to think about where you put your energy. Don't self-sacrifice. That's a really important thing around this. You can do this much through creative energy and through your influence and through your voice. Her advice is only settle for eternity. Yeah, you're here for the big stuff. She says love and faith will defeat violence. And I think that's true ultimately, but in the material world, I just think you have to be a little bit careful of the people whose motives are not as pure as yours. And lastly, she says, be not afraid of fire and arrows or anything that may come. So you don't go into fear. You've got support around it. But be judicious, I think, about how you use this energy. There's a creative outlet for your spiritual message, I think, pile 3. You don't necessarily have to go into the realms which would make it hard for you to stay spiritually pure, or which would not understand you. So think about where you use this energy, and then I think you'll be fine. So I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. If you care to share, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.